In my last video I showed how the common LFO can be adjusted by selecting the P common LFO stroke KT setting. The KT stands for keyboard tracking, and this can be used as an AMS source to control other parameters. So what is key tracking or keyboard tracking, and where can we use it? Typically when we play a note at the top, middle or the bottom of the keyboard, the tone and volume will be the same. The pitch will get higher as we move from left to right, but as we'll see, by using keyboard tracking, the synth settings can be adjusted so that different parts of the keyboard will play louder than others, and we can even produce different tonal effects at different parts of the keyboard by setting filter effects to be more or less pronounced at the bottom, middle or top notes. I'm going to start with an initialized program, and you should have one of these in your user bank unless you have overwritten them all. In this case you'll need to find a user sound that you don't want and press the function key and follow the prompts to initialize a patch. These initialized programs are labelled init prog. An init prog is a single piano sample with no effects and sounds that are really lifeless. So let's give it some dignity and add a little bit of reverb to it to start off with. Press the menu key and scroll down to the PMFX page. In the setting number 2 at the bottom, use the dial to turn on the little box to enable it, and select patch 106, which is the plate reverb, and set the return to about 20. That's just going to give the track a little bit of life, but I don't want to put too much reverb on it, because if I do, what's going to happen is you're not going to hear what the key tracking is doing to the sounds I'm using. So let's leave it on a fairly low setting, fairly neutral setting for the time being. I'm going to start by showing how the amp key tracking works, and then I'll use it as an AMS source. I'll then move on to the filter key tracking and use that as an AMS source. Press the menu button and scroll to the P amp setting. That's OK. And use the page plus to tab over to the key track setting. You'll notice that the top line contains a row of zeros and the bottom contains F2, C4 and C6. We can use these settings to change the volume of the Kross's keys in 4 areas across the keyboard. These zones can be changed but are set presently to the notes C1 to F2, from F sharp to C4, from C sharp 4 to C6, and from C sharp to whatever is the highest note on your Kross. I've got the Kross 88 version, so the settings may be different on the shorter version. However, the idea is the same on both versions of the Kross. If you highlight the setting of the first 2 zeros and use the dial and set that to 99, and then use the arrow buttons to tab over to the far right setting and set that to -99, what you'll notice is that at this top end of the keyboard nothing happens, but at the bottom end and that's key tracking at work. You can actually hear the difference in volume when I've pushed up the bottom end of the keys, that area up to F2, and at the top end turned it right down to -99. That's a bit too extreme. Let's set -74. Here, the further I go up the keyboard, the quieter it becomes. I'm using full force on both keys, so there's no difference in the key pressure I'm applying with both hands. If you tab down to the zone settings at the bottom, you'll see that you can change the notes, and this will move the point at which the volume starts to increase or decrease depending on where you set the various ramps on these sectors. These can be adjusted up or down to create different volume levels across the keyboard in these 4 different zones. You might not think that this is much of an effect for the piano, but for a special effect it's quite useful. And you might want to play a chord in the left hand and then play a lead line that cuts through with the right hand, so you can adjust the volume accordingly and probably put the split somewhere in the middle. The volume is following or tracking the notes as we move along the keyboard, and you may see this effect described as key following. Now this video is about AMS, so let's see how key tracking can be used as an AMS source to control other settings on the Kross. Press the menu button and go to the P pitch page, press OK, and this time we're going to set the AMS to common LFO and the amount to +12. You get that weird LFO working on the piano sound. As you can hear, there's already a common LFO running in this program, so if you press a key you'll hear the LFO working as I've just seen. The LFO is changing the pitch up and down an octave, but if we set an arpeggiator running and hold down a key at the bottom of the keyboard and the chord right at the top, you should be able to hear the difference between the volume as the key tracking is working on it as well. So right at the top it's very quiet, as you can hear. That's a pretty weird sound, I'm sure you'll agree. But I've put together a preset that shows all of the things I'm talking about in this video, so you'll get some idea of how you might be able to use the idea of key tracking, both on the filter and on the amplifier.